What is it about exorcisms that grips us so tightly? Maybe it's the idea of battling unseen forces, the thought that there's something out there beyond our understanding. Or maybe it's the stories, the ones that make your spine tingle and leave you wondering, could that actually happen? Exorcisms sit right on the edge of the supernatural and the psychological, a mysterious blend of faith, fear, and fascination. For centuries, exorcisms have been the stuff of legends and nightmares. They've fueled blockbuster movies, inspired countless books, and sparked debates that blur the lines between belief and science. But while Hollywood loves to make exorcisms dramatic, with spinning heads and green vomit, the reality is often far more nuanced. In the Catholic Church, exorcisms are a sacred and deeply serious ritual, performed under strict guidelines and only in specific circumstances. The practice of exorcism is as old as human civilization itself. Long before the Catholic Church formalized its rites, ancient cultures had their own methods of driving out spirits. From Babylonian incantations to the shamanic rituals of indigenous peoples, humanity has always been drawn to the idea that unseen forces could influence our world, and that they could be controlled or expelled. The Church's exorcism ritual, outlined in the Rituale Romanum, is part of this ancient tradition, blending spiritual authority with ritualistic precision. Here's the big question: are exorcisms proof of the supernatural, or do they reflect the complexities of the human mind? In a world increasingly defined by science, why does the Catholic Church continue to train exorcists? What's real? What's myth? And why does this ancient practice still resonate today? These aren't just academic questions. They go to the heart of how we understand faith, fear, and the nature of good and evil. And then there's the cultural side. Exorcisms have become a phenomenon in their own right, thanks to movies like The Exorcist and countless imitators. These films have shaped our perceptions, turning what was once a quiet and private ritual into a spectacle of terror. But how much of what we see on screen reflects reality? Does the dramatic Hollywood version of exorcism help or harm our understanding of the practice? In this exploration, we're going to peel back the layers of fact and fiction surrounding exorcisms. We'll start by understanding what an exorcism actually is, from the Church's perspective to the cultural lens. Then, we'll dive into their history, uncovering how these rituals evolved over time. Along the way, we'll meet the people who've been part of these stories: priests, skeptics, and even those who've claimed to be possessed. Exorcisms aren't just about demons or devils. They're about belief, identity, and the age-old battle between light and darkness. They force us to confront questions about good and evil, about the limits of science, and about the power of faith. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, you can't deny this. Exorcisms tell us something profound about the human condition. So buckle up, because we're diving deep into one of the Catholic Church's most mysterious and misunderstood practices. From the ancient rites to the modern protocols, from famous cases to psychological insights, this is the real story of exorcism. What is an exorcism? Exorcisms. What are they, really? At their core, exorcisms are rituals performed by the Catholic Church to expel demonic entities from a person, place, or object believed to be under spiritual attack. It's not just a spooky trope for movies or folklore. It's a practice deeply rooted in Catholic theology, with strict guidelines that make it far more controlled than most people realize. Let's break it down. The Catholic Church teaches that the devil is real, and that he and his demonic followers can influence the world. However, cases of true demonic possession are considered incredibly rare. Most spiritual disturbances, according to church officials, have more mundane explanations, such as mental illness, trauma, or stress. This is why the Church approaches exorcism with caution and discernment, treating it as a last resort after all other possibilities have been ruled out. The Church's view on exorcism is outlined in the Rituale Romanum, a manual of prayers and instructions first published in 1614 and updated as recently as 1999. According to this text, exorcism is a sacramental, not a sacrament, but a sacred action instituted by the Church to invoke God's power against evil. This distinction is crucial, as it underscores that the rite is not magic. It's a prayerful appeal to God. There are two primary types of exorcisms in the Catholic Church: minor and major. Minor exorcisms. These are more common and less dramatic. They're often performed during rites like baptism, where prayers are said to protect the individual from evil influences. Major exorcisms. These are the ones you've heard about. The full-fledged battle against demonic possession. Major exorcisms are only performed by trained exorcists, under the explicit permission of their bishop, and after a thorough investigation to confirm the presence of a demonic entity. It's important to note that the Church doesn't rush into major exorcisms. In fact, the process of approval can take months or even years, as the Church ensures that every alternative explanation has been exhausted. In the Catholic Church, exorcisms are performed by priests specifically appointed as exorcists by their bishop. These priests undergo specialized training, often at institutions like the Pontifical Athenaeum Regina Apostolorum in Rome, where they study theology, psychology, and the intricacies of demonic possession. Exorcists are trained not only to perform the rituals, but also to discern between true possession and other issues. They work closely with medical professionals to ensure that cases are not misdiagnosed. It's not unusual for exorcists to consult psychiatrists or psychologists during an investigation, as many so-called possessions turn out to be mental health crises. So, how does the Church determine if someone is truly possessed? According to Catholic teaching, there are specific signs that indicate demonic influence, including speaking in languages the individual could not have learned, displaying superhuman strength, an aversion to sacred objects like crucifixes or holy water, knowledge of hidden or distant events that the individual could not possibly know. However, these signs are not taken at face value. The Church emphasizes rigorous investigation to rule out natural causes, ensuring that no one undergoes an exorcism unnecessarily. The rite of exorcism itself is a solemn and carefully structured process. It begins with prayers, readings from Scripture, and invocations of God's power. The exorcist may use holy water, a crucifix, and other sacred items as symbols of faith. Throughout the ritual, the priest commands the demon to reveal its name and to leave the afflicted person, always invoking the authority of Christ. Contrary to Hollywood's depictions, exorcisms are not always dramatic. They often involve hours of quiet prayer and dialogue, with moments of intensity when the afflicted person exhibits resistance. In some cases, the ritual must be repeated multiple times before the person is fully delivered. In an age of science and skepticism, the existence of exorcisms might seem anachronistic. Yet for the Catholic Church, the practice remains relevant. Exorcisms are not just about expelling demons. They're also about providing spiritual comfort to those who believe they are under attack. For many, the mere act of having their concerns taken seriously is a form of healing in itself. The Church also views exorcisms as a way to affirm its teachings on the reality of evil and the power of Christ. While it acknowledges the role of science and medicine, the Church believes there are some mysteries that go beyond human understanding. Exorcisms occupy a unique space where faith and skepticism collide. For believers, they're proof of God's power over evil. For skeptics, they're relics of a superstitious past, better explained by psychology than theology. But regardless of where you stand, one thing is clear: exorcisms are more than just rituals. They're stories about fear, hope, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. The history of exorcisms. Exorcisms may feel like something out of medieval legends, but their roots stretch far deeper, into the heart of ancient civilizations and the early days of human spirituality. Across cultures and centuries, exorcisms have evolved from primitive rituals to the formalized practices we associate with the Catholic Church today. Let's journey through time and uncover how the history of exorcisms reflects humanity's eternal struggle to understand and combat the forces of darkness. Long before the advent of Christianity, ancient religions practiced their own forms of exorcism. In Mesopotamia, priests invoked the gods to banish malevolent spirits they believed caused disease or misfortune. The Babylonian Maklu texts, for example, contain incantations designed to protect against witchcraft and demonic influence. In ancient Egypt, healers used prayers, amulets, and rituals to ward off evil forces. The Ebers Papyrus, an ancient medical text, describes procedures that blend medicine and spiritual practices to treat afflictions caused by supernatural beings. Even Greek and Roman traditions included elements of exorcism. In Homer's Odyssey, Odysseus encounters spirits and employs rituals to communicate with and appease them. These early practices reflect a common belief across civilizations. Unseen forces could impact human life, and specialized rituals could restore balance. Exorcism took on a new form with the rise of Christianity. In the New Testament, Jesus is depicted as performing exorcisms, casting out demons and healing the afflicted. Stories like the exorcism of the Gerasene demoniac, where Jesus sends a legion of demons into a herd of pigs, became foundational to the church's understanding of spiritual warfare. The early church saw exorcism as a sign of divine authority. Early Christian leaders, including Saints Peter and Paul, were believed to have performed exorcisms, emphasizing the church's power over evil. As Christianity spread, exorcisms became a regular part of religious practice, often incorporated into the baptismal rites of new converts. By the 4th century, the church had begun to formalize its approach. Exorcists became recognized as a minor order within the clergy, tasked with performing rites to protect individuals and communities from spiritual harm. This institutionalization marked a shift from informal rituals to standardized practices. The Middle Ages were a time when fear of the supernatural reached its peak. Widespread belief in demons and witchcraft fueled the demand for exorcisms, and the church responded with increasingly elaborate rituals. Manuals like the Ritual Romanum provided clergy with step-by-step instructions, blending scripture, prayers, and sacred objects like holy water and crucifixes. This period also saw the rise of public exorcisms, where clergy would perform the rites in front of large crowds. These spectacles served both spiritual and social purposes, reaffirming the church's authority and offering reassurance to communities plagued by fear. However, the Middle Ages were also a time of abuse and superstition. Accusations of possession were sometimes used to justify persecution, particularly against women accused of witchcraft. The line between spiritual care and social control blurred, leaving a legacy of controversy. As the Renaissance ushered in an age of scientific inquiry, exorcisms began to face scrutiny. Scholars like Desiderius Erasmus questioned the Church's reliance on rituals, calling for greater discernment and rationality. At the same time, the Protestant Reformation challenged Catholic practices, including exorcism, as overly ritualistic and superstitious. Despite these criticisms, exorcisms remained a central part of Catholic life. The Church revised its rituals to address growing skepticism, emphasizing the theological basis for exorcisms rather than their dramatic elements. The publication of the Ritual Romanum in 1614 was a response to these challenges, providing a clear framework for performing exorcisms in a way that aligned with Catholic doctrine. The Enlightenment brought with it a wave of skepticism toward exorcisms. As science advanced, phenomena once attributed to demons, like epilepsy or mental illness, were increasingly understood through medical and psychological lenses. This shift led to a decline in exorcisms, as the Church itself began to prioritize medical explanations over spiritual ones. However, the 20th century saw a resurgence of interest in exorcism, fueled by cultural and social changes. The 1973 film The Exorcist brought the practice back into the spotlight, creating both fascination and fear. Suddenly, exorcisms were a topic of public discourse, with the Church reporting a rise in requests for the ritual. In response, the Vatican took steps to modernize its approach. The Ritual Romanum was revised in 1999 to reflect contemporary understandings of possession and mental health. The updated guidelines emphasized the need for collaboration with medical professionals and reinforced the importance of thorough investigation before performing an exorcism. Council of Trent, 1545-1563. In response to Protestant critiques, the Catholic Church reaffirmed its teachings on exorcism, emphasizing its spiritual necessity. Pope Leo III, 1890, introduced the prayer to Saint Michael, a short exorcism prayer that could be recited by any believer. The 1999 revision of the Ritual Romanum modernized the Church's approach, incorporating scientific insights while maintaining its theological foundations. Today, exorcisms occupy a complex space within the Catholic Church. While the practice remains a sacred ritual, It is performed sparingly and under strict conditions. The Church acknowledges the importance of science and medicine, working closely with professionals to ensure that no one is harmed by unnecessary or misguided rituals. At the same time, exorcisms remain a powerful symbol of the Church's belief in the reality of spiritual warfare. They speak to the enduring human fascination with the unseen and the eternal struggle between good and evil. Exorcisms have come a long way from their ancient origins, evolving in response to cultural, scientific, and theological changes. Yet, they remain a profound expression of humanity's quest to understand and overcome the forces that threaten us. Whether you view them as relics of the past or enduring acts of faith, one thing is certain: exorcisms are a window into the mysteries of the human spirit. Famous exorcisms in history. Exorcisms are steeped in mystery, but some cases stand out for their dramatic details and lingering questions. These stories have transcended time, captivating imaginations and fueling debates about faith, science, and the supernatural. From tragic accounts of individuals struggling with mental illness to the real-life inspirations behind Hollywood's biggest hits, these famous exorcisms reveal the complex interplay between belief and reality. Few exorcism stories are as haunting and heartbreaking as that of Anneliese Michel. Born in Germany in 1952, Anneliese grew up in a devout Catholic family. By her late teens, she began experiencing severe seizures, eventually being diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy. Despite medical treatment, her condition worsened. She reported hearing voices and seeing demonic faces, and she grew increasingly convinced that she was possessed. Her family turned to the Church for help, believing that her suffering went beyond the realm of medicine. In 1975, 2 priests were authorized by their bishop to perform the Rituale Romanum. Over the course of 10 months, Anneliese underwent 67 exorcism sessions. Recordings from these sessions capture chilling moments where she spoke in guttural voices and claimed to be multiple demons, including Lucifer and Judas. Tragically, Anneliese died in 1976 from malnutrition and dehydration, weighing just 68 pounds at the time of her death. Her parents and the priests were later charged with negligent homicide. The trial brought exorcisms into the global spotlight, sparking debates about the ethics of the practice and the dangers of neglecting medical care. The 1973 film The Exorcist terrified audiences worldwide, but few know it was inspired by a real-life case. In 1949, a 14-year-old boy, referred to by the pseudonym Roland Doe, became the center of one of the most documented exorcism cases in modern history. The ordeal began after the death of Roland's aunt, who had introduced him to the use of a Ouija board. Soon after, strange occurrences began. Objects reportedly moved on their own, strange noises filled the house, and scratches appeared on Roland's body. His family, desperate for answers, sought help from the Church. Over several weeks, priests performed dozens of exorcisms on Roland at a Catholic hospital in St. Louis. Witnesses reported phenomena such as levitation, unexplainable physical strength, and guttural growls. The exorcisms culminated in a climactic session during which Roland allegedly convulsed violently before falling silent. The priests declared him freed from possession. Unlike Anneliese Michel's case, Roland went on to live a relatively normal life, and his identity remains protected to this day. The story continues to fascinate, serving as a chilling reminder of the blurred lines between psychological distress and spiritual belief. The Smurl family's experiences in the 1970s and 80s are a unique blend of exorcism and paranormal investigation. Jack and Janet Smurl, along with their children, reported terrifying events in their home in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. The family claimed to hear guttural growls, witness objects moving on their own, and feel unseen forces physically attack them. After enduring years of disturbances, the Smurls turned to Ed and Lorraine Warren, famous paranormal investigators, for help. The Warrens believed the family was dealing with a demonic infestation and arranged for multiple exorcisms to be performed. While the Catholic Church never officially acknowledged the case, the Smurls maintained that the exorcisms helped reduce the paranormal activity. Their story was later adapted into the book and movie The Haunted, contributing to the enduring fascination with exorcism as both a spiritual and cultural phenomenon. Despite the rise of science and skepticism, exorcism remains a relevant practice for the Catholic Church, with several high-profile cases emerging in recent years. One notable example is the story of Julia, a pseudonym for a woman whose exorcisms were documented by Dr. Richard Gallagher, a psychiatrist and professor of clinical psychiatry. Gallagher, who works alongside Catholic priests, witnessed events during Julia's sessions that he described as unexplainable by science, including her speaking in languages she did not know and displaying superhuman strength. Julia's case underscores the Church's insistence on collaboration between exorcists and medical professionals. It also highlights the growing acceptance among some in the scientific community that not all phenomena can be easily explained. The fame of these cases owes much to their portrayal in books, movies, and news reports. Films like The Exorcist, The Conjuring, and The Rite have turned real-life exorcisms into cultural touchstones, blurring the lines between fact and fiction. This dramatization often overshadows the realities of exorcism, where rituals are typically far less sensational than their Hollywood counterparts. Yet the media's role cannot be dismissed entirely. By bringing these stories to light, they ensure that the discussion about exorcism, its ethics, its efficacy, and its place in modern society remains active. They also challenge viewers to confront their beliefs about the supernatural, forcing them to consider whether they believe in a world beyond what they can see. Cases like Anneliese Michel's raise profound ethical questions. When does faith cross the line into harm? How should the Church balance spiritual care with medical intervention? And what responsibility does it bear for the outcomes of these intense, life-altering rituals? These questions remain at the heart of the exorcism debate, reminding us that these stories are not just about demons or miracles. They're about real people and their struggles. Famous exorcisms like those of Anneliese Michel and Roland Doe continue to captivate because they tap into universal fears and hopes. They challenge our understanding of good and evil, of what is real and what lies beyond. And whether viewed as cautionary tales or proof of the divine, they remain powerful reminders of humanity's enduring fascination with the unknown. The role of psychology in exorcisms. Exorcisms exist at the intersection of faith and psychology. While the Catholic Church views possession as a spiritual reality, the modern world increasingly interprets it through the lens of mental health. This chapter explores the delicate balance between these two perspectives, diving into how psychology contributes to our understanding of exorcisms and the human mind. One of the central debates about exorcism is the distinction between demonic possession and mental health disorders. Many symptoms traditionally associated with possession, uncontrollable movements, dissociative states, or hearing voices, are also hallmarks of conditions like epilepsy, schizophrenia, or dissociative identity disorder, DID. Epilepsy, for instance, can cause seizures, altered states of consciousness, and even auditory or visual hallucinations. In the past, such symptoms were often misinterpreted as evidence of spiritual interference. Similarly, DID can result in dramatic personality shifts and behaviors that mimic possession, with patients adopting new identities or speaking in voices markedly different from their own. A particularly striking example is a case from the 1800s in France, where a young woman was believed to be possessed due to her violent outbursts and otherworldly speech. Centuries later, medical historians diagnosed her symptoms as likely stemming from Tourette syndrome and extreme stress. The overlap between spiritual and medical interpretations has long complicated the issue. The Church recognizes this and emphasizes discernment. Before proceeding with an exorcism, clergy must rule out natural causes through consultations with medical and psychological professionals. This step is critical in preventing unnecessary harm and ensuring that individuals receive appropriate care. In modern exorcism practices, mental health professionals play a vital role. Psychiatrists and psychologists are often called upon to evaluate individuals who believe they are possessed. Their assessments help determine whether symptoms stem from a mental health condition or if they require spiritual intervention. Dr. Richard Gallagher, a psychiatrist and professor, has become one of the most prominent voices advocating for collaboration between clinicians and exorcists. Over his career, Gallagher has witnessed cases that defy scientific explanation, including patients who exhibited unexplainable knowledge of distant events or spoke fluently in languages they had never learned. However, Gallagher's approach is cautious. He emphasizes that the majority of cases he encounters have medical or psychological roots rather than supernatural ones. His role is not to confirm possession, but to rule out natural explanations, ensuring that the Church's interventions are based on rigorous investigation. This collaboration between clergy and clinicians represents a growing trend in the Church, reflecting an understanding of how spiritual and psychological care can coexist. Belief in possession is deeply influenced by cultural and religious contexts. In societies where faith plays a central role, individuals may interpret unexplained physical or emotional disturbances as evidence of demonic influence. For example, in regions of Africa and South America, possession is often linked to cultural traditions that blend Christianity with indigenous beliefs. In these communities, the line between spiritual healing and mental health care can be fluid, with exorcism seen as a natural response to crises. Stress and trauma can also contribute to the belief in possession. In times of extreme psychological distress, individuals may seek spiritual explanations for their suffering. This is particularly true in communities where mental health services are limited or stigmatized. For them, exorcisms provide not just a spiritual solution, but also a sense of validation and support. Exorcisms can have profound psychological effects, which vary depending on the individual's beliefs and experiences. For those who genuinely believe they are possessed, the ritual can provide a sense of relief and empowerment. The act of exorcism validates their experiences and offers hope for liberation, aligning with their cultural or religious worldview. Consider a case from the Philippines, where a young woman underwent an exorcism after reporting visions of dark figures. The ritual, though intense, left her feeling freed and reintegrated into her community. Psychologists later noted that her recovery could be attributed, in part, to the placebo effect, the power of belief in fostering emotional and psychological healing. However, exorcisms can also be deeply traumatic. The intense emotions and physical strain involved in the ritual can exacerbate existing mental health conditions. In cases like Annalisa Michel's, the lack of medical oversight led to devastating consequences. Such tragedies underscore the importance of ensuring that exorcisms are performed only when all other options have been explored. The Church has adapted its guidelines to address these risks. Modern protocols emphasize collaboration with medical experts and strict oversight by trained clergy, ensuring that the well-being of the individual is always the priority. Psychologists recognize the powerful role that belief plays in shaping experiences. The placebo effect, for example, demonstrates how belief in a treatment's efficacy can lead to real improvements in health. Similarly, exorcisms may work in part because they align with the individual's belief system. For devout Catholics, the ritual of exorcism serves as a structured environment where they feel supported and protected. The use of prayers, sacred symbols, and rituals creates a psychological framework for confronting fears and reclaiming control. This aligns with broader principles in psychology, where rituals and symbols often play a role in therapeutic practices. Despite advances in psychiatry and neuroscience, the question of possession remains open to interpretation. While science can explain many phenomena once attributed to demons, some cases continue to challenge conventional understanding. For example, phenomena such as glossolalia, speaking in tongues, and unexplainable physical feats during exorcisms have been studied extensively. While skeptics attribute these occurrences to psychological or neurological states, others argue that they hint at a deeper mystery beyond the scope of science. This tension between science and spirituality is not necessarily a conflict. Instead, it highlights the need for a holistic approach to human well-being, one that considers both the mind and the soul. Exorcisms and psychology share a common goal: to alleviate suffering. Whether through prayer or therapy, they offer pathways to healing for individuals grappling with profound struggles. By embracing collaboration and dialogue, the Church and the scientific community can better serve those in need, respecting both their spiritual and psychological realities. This balanced approach is not just practical, it's essential. For those who believe they are possessed, an exorcism may be the key to healing. For others, psychological care provides the answers they seek. Together, these perspectives enrich our understanding of what it means to confront the unseen forces, both internal and external, that shape the human experience. Exorcisms in pop culture. Exorcisms have been a part of religious rituals for centuries, but their portrayal in popular culture has taken on a life of its own. Movies, books, and television shows have transformed the solemn and often quiet ritual of exorcism into a spectacle of terror and drama. This chapter explores how pop culture has shaped perceptions of exorcisms, the fine line between fact and fiction, and the impact of these portrayals on both public imagination and the Catholic Church. When people think of exorcisms, they're often imagining scenes from The Exorcist, 1973, a film that redefined horror cinema and introduced audiences to the terrifying concept of demonic possession. From Linda Blair's spinning head to the chilling chant of "The power of Christ compels you," The Exorcist created an enduring image of exorcisms as violent, dramatic confrontations between good and evil. The movie was based loosely on the real-life exorcism of Roland Doe, but it exaggerated many elements for dramatic effect. Spinning heads, projectile vomit, and levitation aren't part of the Catholic Church's ritual Romanum. Instead, real exorcisms are often quiet, prayerful events focused on invoking God's power. However, the film's success cemented a vision of exorcisms as chaotic and terrifying, a vision that has been replicated in countless other movies like The Conjuring and The Rite. While Hollywood exorcisms are designed to terrify, they rarely capture the reality of the practice. Real exorcisms are much less theatrical and involve structured prayers, scripture readings, and blessings. The focus is on invoking God's authority, not engaging in a dramatic battle. For instance, while movies often depict exorcists as lone heroes battling demons, real-life exorcisms typically involve a team, including medical professionals and trained clergy, to ensure the safety of the person undergoing the ritual. The Church also imposes strict protocols, requiring extensive investigation to rule out psychological or medical explanations before approving an exorcism. This gap between Hollywood's portrayals and the Church's practices can lead to misunderstandings. Many people who request exorcisms today do so because they've been influenced by pop culture, not realizing that possession is rare and that the Church takes a cautious, methodical approach. Pop culture has a powerful influence on how people perceive exorcisms. For some, it sparks fear, leading them to believe that possession is more common or dramatic than it truly is. For others, it inspires fascination, fueling a growing interest in the paranormal and supernatural. Interestingly, the rise of exorcism-themed entertainment has coincided with an increase in exorcism requests reported by the Catholic Church. Priests have noted that many of these requests are driven by misconceptions from movies and media. While this can complicate the Church's work, it also underscores the enduring appeal of exorcisms as a symbol of humanity's struggle with the unknown. Exorcisms aren't confined to the big screen. They've appeared in books like William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist, which inspired the iconic film, and Malachi Martin's controversial Hostage to the Devil, which claimed to document real-life cases of possession. These works blend fact and fiction, creating an air of mystery that captivates readers. Television has also embraced the theme, with shows like Supernatural and the Exorcist series exploring exorcisms as part of larger narratives about good versus evil. While these portrayals often stray far from reality, they continue to feed the public's appetite for stories about the supernatural. The Catholic Church has a complicated relationship with the popularization of exorcisms. On one hand, the media spotlight can draw attention to the Church's teachings on spiritual warfare. On the other, sensationalist portrayals risk trivializing or misrepresenting a deeply sacred ritual. Some Church leaders have expressed concern that Hollywood's depictions may lead to unnecessary fear or encourage superstitious beliefs. Others see an opportunity to educate people about the realities of exorcism, emphasizing the importance of discernment and collaboration with medical professionals. At its core, the appeal of exorcisms in pop culture lies in their exploration of universal themes: good versus evil, the power of faith, and the mysteries of the human soul. They tap into primal fears and offer the promise of redemption, making them a compelling subject for storytelling. Exorcisms also blur the line between the natural and supernatural, forcing audiences to question their beliefs about the unseen forces that may influence our lives. Whether you view them as religious rituals or dramatic allegories, exorcisms continue to captivate because they speak to something fundamental about the human experience. Exorcisms in pop culture may not reflect reality, but they reveal a deep fascination with the spiritual battles that define our stories and our lives. By understanding the differences between fact and fiction, we can appreciate the power of these tales while remaining grounded in the truth, current church practices, and guidelines. Exorcisms may seem like relics of the past, but for the Catholic Church, they remain a solemn and active part of spiritual life. In recent years, the Church has updated its guidelines and protocols, adapting to the challenges of modernity while maintaining the integrity of its traditions. This chapter explores the Church's current stance on exorcisms, the rigorous training process for exorcists, and the strict approval protocols that govern the practice today. The Catholic Church firmly believes in the existence of evil and the reality of spiritual warfare. Exorcisms are viewed not as superstitious rituals, but as sacramentals, sacred actions instituted by the Church to invoke God's power against demonic forces. However, the Church emphasizes that cases of true possession are extremely rare, and that exorcisms should only be performed when absolutely necessary. The Church also acknowledges the importance of medical and psychological evaluations in discerning whether an individual's symptoms are spiritual in nature. This cautious approach reflects the Church's commitment to safeguarding the well-being of those seeking help. Becoming an exorcist is no simple task. Priests appointed to this role undergo extensive training, often at institutions like the Pontifical Athenaeum Regina Apostolorum in Rome. Their education includes theology, demonology, and the psychological factors that can mimic possession. Exorcists are also trained to collaborate with medical professionals, ensuring that all possible natural explanations are ruled out before an exorcism is performed. The training process emphasizes humility, discernment, and adherence to church protocols. Exorcists are reminded that their authority comes not from themselves but from Christ, and that the focus of the rite is always on the afflicted individual's healing and liberation. The Church has strict guidelines for approving an exorcism. The process begins with a thorough investigation, during which clergy and medical professionals assess the individual's symptoms. If natural explanations such as mental illness or neurological conditions cannot account for the disturbances, the case may be referred to the bishop. Only the bishop has the authority to approve a major exorcism. Once permission is granted, the appointed exorcist follows the Rituale Romanum, a carefully structured set of prayers and rituals designed to invoke God's protection and expel demonic forces. Exorcisms in the modern Catholic Church are not sensational battles, but measured, prayerful interventions performed with great care. By adhering to these rigorous standards, the Church ensures that its ancient practices remain relevant and compassionate in a contemporary world. Conclusion and reflection. Exorcisms occupy a fascinating space in our collective imagination, blending faith, psychology, and culture into one mysterious ritual. Whether you see them as relics of the past, vital acts of faith, or dramatic allegories, they challenge us to confront questions that lie at the heart of the human experience. What is evil? What is the source of our suffering? And how do we reconcile the unseen with what we know to be true? The Catholic Church, for its part, views exorcisms as a sacred response to spiritual warfare, rooted in centuries of tradition and theology. While the Church acknowledges the importance of science and psychology, it also affirms the reality of evil as a spiritual force. The careful protocols and rigorous training that govern modern exorcisms reflect a commitment to both compassion and discernment, ensuring that this ancient practice serves the needs of a contemporary world. But exorcisms are more than just church rituals. They're cultural touchstones that tap into our deepest fears and hopes. Movies like The Exorcist, books like Hostage to the Devil, and countless pop culture portrayals reveal our fascination with the battle between light and darkness, faith and skepticism, and the natural and supernatural. These stories, though fictionalized, remind us that the questions exorcisms provoke are timeless and universal. At the same time, the role of psychology in understanding exorcisms highlights the complexities of human suffering. By addressing the intersections of mental health, cultural beliefs, and spiritual practices, we see how exorcisms can provide relief and healing for some, while posing risks for others. This duality underscores the importance of collaboration between clergy and clinicians in ensuring that those in need receive the care they deserve. So, are exorcisms proof of the supernatural, or are they reflections of our psychological and cultural struggles? Perhaps they're both, or neither. What's clear is that exorcisms reveal much about the human condition, our fears, our faith, and our relentless search for meaning. What do you think? Are exorcisms a testament to divine power, a psychological phenomenon, or something else entirely? Share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear your perspective. So, what do you think? Are exorcisms proof of demonic forces, or do they reveal the power of the human mind? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell for more captivating stories like this one. Until next time, stay curious, and may you find peace in both the seen and the unseen.